I'm so excited that everybody is here today, and I'm so grateful to Jane for allowing me to be part of the Summer Information Literacy Virtual Workshop Series. So thank you so much. Um, my name is Amanda Folk. I am the head of the Teaching and Learning Department here at the Ohio State University Libraries, and as of yesterday, am a full professor at Ohio State as well. So that's exciting to have all of this kind of culminate together. Um, I'm going to be sharing some work that I've been doing, and I'll present some caveats throughout the presentation today. But this is very much a work in progress. And if you had the good fortune of attending or watching the recording of Jane's transformative information literacy presentation, I think she prefaced that presentation by saying she was very excited to share, but also very nervous because, like Jane, I've been doing a lot of thinking around this for quite some time, and it's somewhat conceptual, and I haven't really shared it too widely yet. So I'm a little bit nervous to do so and see what folks' reactions are to that, and if I'm doing it justice in terms of my explanations. Alrighty, we're going to skip over the activity here because we did have a really great pre-workshop conversation. Several links have been shared in the chat already, but I'll share a slide here for a moment that gives you both a link and a QR code to the presentation materials, and that should be both a PDF of the PowerPoint as well as a link to a spreadsheet that we'll be looking at later. I will share that link again when we get to that point. So if you don't get it now, uh, no worries. And again, this link should be in the chat as well, but there is a Padlet. And Jane, I know I mentioned this to you before. If you see questions on the Padlet or in the Zoom Q&A that seem really like pressing, that should be addressed sooner rather than later, please just interrupt me, and we'll do those questions sooner rather than later. Alrighty. So the purpose of today's presentation is to present a new model for thinking about how to scaffold information literacy related learning that is rooted in both threshold concept theory and epistemological development models. And I did have to practice epistemological development models quite a bit to say that without messing it up. And if you're not familiar with either of those, no worries. We're going to cover some basic foundations of those before we move into the model. And hopefully, after today's session, you should be able to do a couple of things. I can't promise that you'll be able to say epistemological development, but hopefully you could define or describe it. Um, Hopefully, you'll be able to describe the potential relationship between information literacy threshold concepts and epistemological development models, and develop an awareness of this new model that I'm going to share and think about how it might be useful to you in designing teaching or instructive that's reflective of the level of learner. I should add too, for my dissertation, I used hermeneutic phenomenology. See, I'm out of practice with that one. So I kind of do these things to myself. There we go. All right. So I think we probably have a lot of folks who do have a basic understanding of what information literacy is and how librarians in particular think of it, but we're going to go through some basics just so that we're all on the same page. And I do want to share that the next few slides about information literacy were created for the Meaningful Inquiry Workshop series that I'm a collaborator with several colleagues, Katie Bloxage, Hannah Primo, Jane, and our colleague, Dr. Christopher Mannion from Writing Across the Curriculum. So I did ask permission to reuse some of those slides for today's presentation. For some reason, there we go. My mouse was not appearing. All right, what is information literacy? The Association of College and Research Libraries released a document called the Framework for Information Literacy for Higher Education in 2016. And previously, we had academic librarians, had a document called the Standards that was replaced by this particular document. And the standards really presented very much a skills and task-based conceptualization of information literacy, so things that information literate learners should be able to do or should be learning to do. And they were relatively generic or universal skills insofar as the idea was they could kind of be transferred among different contexts. But as you see in the definition that is shared on the screen, in the framework, information literacy emphasizes that students need to have an understanding of how information is produced, shared, and valued. And it also emphasizes that students are information creators as well as consumers, and they have rights and responsibilities in each of those roles. So it takes on a slightly different flavor than the standards did and moves away from the articulation of skills and tasks to ways of thinking, knowing, and acting. And we'll dig into what that looks like here a little bit more. So this new conceptualization relies heavily on this idea of threshold concepts, which is an attempt to identify core understandings that guide many of our expectations for critical thinking about information literacy. And I'll dig a little bit more into threshold concepts as well. The framework highlights 6 core threshold concepts, which are here on the screen, and they're understandings that are shared across researchers and scholars in various disciplines that can significantly influence our expectations for how students engage with information. And so without an understanding of these 6 concepts, many components of a research or inquiry-based assignment may not make much sense. So for example, without understanding that scholarship is an ongoing conversation among scholars and researchers in which ideas are being exchanged and debated, students may struggle to understand the purpose of an assignment, such as a literature review or an annotated bibliography, since a major goal of those assignments are to put sources in conversation with one another. Man, my cursor is really slow to appear. There we go. Okay. And so each core concept has associated dispositions and knowledge practices. And knowledge practices highlight the expected behaviors based on how experts approach the use of information in their research endeavors. And dispositions identify attitudes towards information usage, which would include finding, evaluating, using, organizing, and synthesizing information or the creation of new knowledge. And so we do have an example here is on the screen. Research as inquiry is one of those 6 core threshold concepts articulated in the framework document. We have a brief description of that here. Research is iterative and depends upon asking increasingly complex or new questions, whose answers in turn develop additional questions or lines of inquiry in any field. And then an example knowledge practice. Deal with complex research by breaking complex questions into simple ones, limiting the scope of investigations. So again, that's very behavior action oriented. But then a disposition is that a learner would value persistence, adaptability, and flexibility, and recognize that ambiguity can benefit the research process. So that's really a mindset or way of thinking about your approach to information and to inquiry. So let's talk just for a moment about these threshold concepts in a little bit more depth, because I think they're important for understanding the argument that I'm going to make with epistemological development. Threshold concepts represent expert ways of thinking and knowing. So for example, I could ask you, what does it mean to think like an expert in your discipline? What are the core ways of thinking and knowing that are foundational for your discipline, but are often difficult for novices to wrap their heads around? So for me, social capital and cultural capital were threshold concepts when I was a graduate student in a school of education. It took me a little bit of time to understand what they were and their relationship to learning and educational attainment. But once I did, it completely transformed how I viewed education more generally, but also how I viewed my work as a librarian. And as I grappled with these concepts, they were troublesome. They were making me question everything I thought I knew about learning and education and my role as a librarian. And they were transformative because I completely changed the way I approached my work and scholarship. And they were also irreversible. It would be almost impossible for me to go back to my prior ways of thinking before I really understood social capital and cultural capital. But because of these characteristics, the fact that they're troublesome, transformative, irreversible, um, excuse me, uh, many learners often remain in a liminal space, moving back and forth between their prior perspectives and emerging new perspectives. And that can be really uncomfortable, both intellectually and emotionally for learners, um, and especially depending on the threshold concept and their own identity or identities. And it's often in this space where we see the novice expert gap come into glaring view. Learners are trying on these new understandings, maybe through mimicry, maybe through trial and error. I know that was true of me when I was a college student, both of those. And instructors might not remember what it was like to be a novice before they moved through these conceptual portals or really internalized these threshold concepts into their ways of thinking. So this can create frustration both for the learner and for the instructor. So how do we manage some of that is what I'm thinking about. Okay, so what does this mean for information literacy? Um, the framework represents expert ways of approaching knowledge. And one of the benefits to the framework is that it makes transparent the why behind information literacy related skills or tasks in higher education. So when we think about the framework, it's not just that students know how to search a database, select a database, search a database, and then all of the subsequent tasks, but when we're thinking about information literacy as couched within the framework, we're also hoping to share the why behind those things, why these tend to be important within higher education, within the academy, within a particular discipline. So we use that a lot at Ohio State in our teaching professional development with instructors, and I know a few of you are here today, so it's great to see you. Because experts often internalize these things and they don't necessarily have the immediate vocabulary to articulate those expectations. And again, thinking about what that might mean for a novice learner within a particular discipline. So we use this as a way to help instructors uh, gain that vocabulary and thinking about articulating their expectations transparently to students. And that's not today necessarily. We have some other workshops that talk specifically about that. But we think there are some really big benefits to the framework in terms of transparency and communicating expectations to learners. However, it provides no real guidance. The framework provides no real guidance for helping learners move towards or through these conceptual portals. So, and I was just in a conversation earlier this week, it can be hard to think about the scaffolding that's needed in order to help students develop these ways of thinking and knowing, as well as if we want to do some kind of assessment about where our students are. And so part of what I'm hoping to do is help to bridge that gap. Okay, epistemological development, not as scary as it sounds, because those are kind of, a lot of syllables in those words and they sound kind of fancy. And if you're not a theory person or a concept person, I know there was a time in my life when, my brain would have been like off, like, nope, don't, not in my realm. But I promise that this will make sense. I hope I do it justice, but, and it's not as scary as it sounds. So the foundations for the presentation today are actually going to be published, I think, next month in an article in Communications and Information Literacy. So I'm going to do a fairly superficial overview of some of this, but do know that in a few weeks, hopefully, if you're interested in digging into a little bit more of the foundations of this work, something will be available. All right. What is epistemology? It is the theory of knowledge. So that includes beliefs about the nature of knowledge, how we come to know what we know, and how knowledge is legitimized and or superseded. And there are several epistemological development models that outline different stages of how individuals' beliefs about knowledge evolve, including what knowledge is and who gets to make knowledge. And I've listed a couple of well-known models here on the screen. Perry in 1970 had a model of cognitive development, and that tends to be really foundational for a lot of the subsequent work in this area. the epistemological reflection model by Baxter-Magolda, which we'll be talking about in a moment, and the reflective judgment model by King and Kitchener, which we'll also be talking about in a moment. And the models that I have on the screen here are focused particularly on learners in higher education or post-secondary education. And there's some similarities between these models, but there's also differences. So you can't just map the different stages of each model to one another because they approach epistemological development in slightly different ways. And in the article I mentioned a moment ago, I explored both the epistemological reflection model and the reflective judgment model because I thought they brought complementary perspectives, particularly in terms of thinking about information literacy. And so I'm going to talk briefly about each of these, though, again, I encourage if you want a little bit more detail than I can give today, that article is definitely a good place to start. All right. So Baxter-Magolda, some folks may know her work because she developed after this a very well-known model and theory for student development, excuse me, that a lot of student affairs practitioners and scholars use in their work. So my understanding is that what I'm about to present here was foundational to that work, but it is also different from that work. So if you're familiar with that model, this is going to be a little bit different from that. In the epistemological reflection model, Baxter-Magolda emphasizes the social and relational aspects of learning and epistemological beliefs. So interactions with instructors and other learners are really important in this model for shaping students' beliefs about knowledge and their beliefs more generally. And this model highlights the journey of learners in the development of their own voice, which I think is something that is sometimes explicit, but also implicit in the framework that we're hoping students are developing their voice and are seeing themselves as emerging knowledge creators. And in this model, there are 4 stages: absolute, transitional, independent, and contextual. And it can get quite long, but I'll talk about some of the elements here, and I'll give an example in a moment. The model includes the nature of knowledge, the role of the learner, the role of the instructor, the role of peers, the role of learning assessment, so assignments and quizzes and tests, and gender-related patterns. And that was something specifically that Baxter-Magolda was interested in looking at. Are there differences in how students approach epistemology based on their gender? And she also discusses beliefs about authority, but from the sources that I've used, it's not explicitly woven into the model. And just to give you a sense of like the distribution of these 4 stages, in Baxter-Magolda's original sample, her original study, absolute was the most common stage in the first year of college, around 68% of her sample. Transitional was most common in the 3rd and 4th years, so transitional is that second stage there, with 83% and 80% respectively. And then independent and contextual, those higher 2 stages, were most common in the year after graduation. So 57% for independent and 12% for contextual. Since Baxter-Magolda's initial study, this model has been widely used to explore students' epistemological development within disciplinary contexts and related to different learning modalities. So if you go do a search in a database or Google Scholar, you can find different studies that have used this particular model to look at students' epistemological beliefs. And here's just a quick overview to give you a sense of how Baxter-Magolda approaches epistemology or knowledge beliefs in this model. So we have here, and this is a modification that I made of the table that appears in the article that I shared before. So nature of knowledge, with absolute, it's certain or absolute. Like knowledge is either right or wrong. There's no real gray areas. For knowledge. So very much like right or wrong, yes or no thinking. And I want to jump ahead. I'm like, difficult to deal with ill-defined problems, but that is related more to King and Kitchener, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. In transition,
I do have
go
one
ahead.
question. Can I jump in? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
We did have one question in the Q&A about what does it mean when you mentioned gender-related patterns?
Yes. So This was the 90s, so specifically looking at differences between male students and female students in terms of how they approach um, knowledge beliefs and their relationship with knowledge. And she did find, at least at the absolute, transitional, and independent levels, that there were different gender-related patterns to students' engagement with and interactions related to knowledge. I can't name those off the top of my head, but in the book that I've cited here, each chapter that covers each one of these stages, except for contextual, because she did not find gender differences there, each chapter discusses those differences in a good amount of depth. I'm happy to build on that if I'll pause here for a moment and see if there's a follow-up to that.
I don't see a follow-up to that, but I do have a
Mhm.
question. So how do the ratios of students in each stage change in non-traditionally aged students?
I have no idea, to be honest. And that could be something, again, that it's possible there's been research that has been done specifically on that student population that may exist out in the world, but I have not come across that. And the learners that were included in Baxter Magolda's original study, I believe, were traditionally aged students. I don't know that if that is exclusively true, but my understanding is that these were students who were going through what we may consider a traditional college-going experience. Great question, though.
No other questions at the moment that I see. Oh, wait, one just popped. No, just a thank you. Okay, you're good.
And you're welcome. Um, so as they move towards independent in terms of nature of knowledge, it becomes a little bit more relativist. Well, everybody has their own beliefs. They're all kind of legitimate. We may believe different things, but everybody is entitled to their beliefs. And then contextual thinkers form beliefs on the basis of evidence. So yes, there may be competing perspectives. We may all have different beliefs, but contextual thinkers can weigh the evidence in front of them and determine what they believe to be as true, and can also justify those beliefs to other people using that evidence. And again, we could go really deep into all of this. I'm just skimming the surface of these things, but I find this work fascinating. Um, Also addresses the role of the learner. In absolute, the first stage obtains knowledge from instructor, memorize and reiterate. But then as they move down the spectrum here, more interested in understanding knowledge and being able to apply that knowledge either to their own lives or use that to apply in different scenarios, perhaps in like a learning assessment in the course. Students start to think for themselves and create their own beliefs and think about why they believe what they believe, and also kind of test that out with their peers by sharing those in class and engaging with others. And this is one gender related difference I do remember. She found in her study that women tended to see those interactions around beliefs with their peers as learning opportunities for themselves to consider other perspectives and think about what that means for their own beliefs, whereas males tended to see that as a way to like express their beliefs and were less interested in kind of learning from their peers, but as a way to try out like their authoritative voice related to their beliefs. So that is one of the gender-related differences in Baxter Magolda's initial study that I remember. And then we move to
We do have some
contextual.
additional questions if you want to address those now or wait later.
Sure. Let's do a
Okay.
couple, and then I'll move on to the reflective judgment model, and then we'll pause again for some questions.
Okay. So are these models based on US students and are there cultural or international differences?
I do address some of that in the article itself in the discussion section. And so it's been a while since I last engaged with that article, so let me think a little bit here. Baxter Magolda's original study was done at Miami University in Ohio. So definitely a US-based student population, though there may have been international students who were part of the study, but I don't know that for certain. Both Baxter Magolda and the epistemological development model, excuse me, epistemological reflection model and the reflective judgment model both have been critiqued by scholars and by learners for presenting a fairly Euro-Western point of view and approach to learning and knowledge development. And again, that's something I grapple with a little bit in the article itself. What does that mean? How do we think about epistemic justice in terms of the use of models like these? And are there ways to be expansive and inclusive of other epistemologies that are different from or perhaps even inconsistent with Euro-Western ways of thinking? The critique is the same for the framework, though, too. I think of Marcia Rapchak's anti-racist approach to the framework and really interrogating it because it lacks any racial dimension. Now, that's just one form of diversity, but I think there are other identities that have been and continue to be marginalized in higher education, but also within our profession that are likely not represented within the framework. I may have gotten away from the original question there, but I think I may have at least addressed the core of it. But
and we actually did have a comment who brought up the issue of indigenous ways of knowing cultural context as well. So related to that. So one more question, or I think we have two right now, if that's okay. So is there any information about how this applies to neurodiverse individuals?
There may be, but I am not familiar with it.
And then we also have a question of Jacob asked, is there a correlation between brain development and this epistemological model? An 18-year-old brain is different than a 22-year-old brain.
Oh, that's interesting. I can't say that with any certainty, but it may stand to reason. I didn't explore in depth like kind of cognitive development models that are rooted specifically within brain development, but I would say based on some of Baxter Magolda's original the findings from her original study, that could stand to be true, as contextual thinkers who are likely to be older and further along in terms of cognitive development were more likely to be in those independent and contextual categories. But that is just my interpretation, and it could be false.
Great. So we do have a couple more questions. How would you like to proceed?
What time? Let me go ahead and jump into the reflective judgment model, and then we can take a few more questions.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you all for keeping the questions coming, and also patience, because while I've done a deep dive into some of this, I have depth, but I don't necessarily always have breadth in terms of how this has been applied to other populations. It's possible that some of that work has been done. It's also possible it has not. But there are a lot of studies out there that have used these different models over the years. Alrighty. Have to get my notes back up here. Apologies. And move things around a little bit so I can see better. Okay. The reflective judgment model, which was developed by King and Kitchener, emphasizes how learners approach complex, ill-structured problems. So just as a reminder, with Baxter Magolda, she was thinking a lot about the social and relational aspects of knowledge development and how beliefs about knowledge development. Here, King and Kitchener are thinking about how individuals approach complex or ill-structured problems. So a little bit different of a flavor for this one. And in particular, they explore how learners make decisions about what to believe and how they move towards solutions or resolutions or, yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. I was going to start to say more, but I don't think I'm going to add anything of value there. This model has 7 stages that are broken into 3 categories. So the 3 categories are pre-reflective, quasi-reflective, and reflective. Stages 1, 2, and 3 fall into pre-reflective. Stages 4 and 5 into quasi-reflective, and stages 6 and 7 into reflective. And I have another chart again, if a visual is helpful. And these 7 stages consider learners' comfort with uncertainty, how they view and evaluate multiple forms of authority, their role as inquirers, and whether knowledge is fixed or evolving. Can't get my mouse to work here. There we go. So this is, again, a modification of a table that appears in the article that will come out next month. And the page numbers that are in the table here are for the King and Kitchener book, not for the article. So stages 4 and 5 comprise a broader category called quasi-reflective. And here we see the nature of knowledge. And some of this is the same, but some of this is a little bit different from Baxter-Magolda. Stage 4 is more about nothing can be known with certainty. Knowledge is obtained through authority figures. In the stage before this, it's more of the absolute or fixed thinking, like right or wrong, yes or no. And so in this stage 4, learners are a little bit beyond that, and moving towards knowledge being very relative. And again, this is where everybody has their own beliefs. We're all entitled to them. No beliefs are better than anyone else's beliefs. They just all exist simultaneously. And then in stage 6, we see kind of a more active approach to engaging with the nature of knowledge. And the learner starts to recognize that knowing is a process that requires action of them. They have to engage in this process. They have to weigh the evidence that's there and think about what that means for their beliefs. And in stage 7, they kind of fully take on that role of inquirer, and that they're agents in constructing knowledge either for themselves or potentially for others as well. Um, I didn't get to address views on authority for the previous model, but here are some of the ones that King and Kitchener present throughout the stages, which is understanding in stage 4, understanding that there are multiple forms of authority, but they can't necessarily prioritize or evaluate them within a particular context. Because again, in stage 4, nothing is known with certainty. Like there's not a sense of how to evaluate or weigh evidence, and that also includes in terms of authority. Um, in stage 5, they start to think a little bit more about the context. They may understand some of the rules of inquiry within a specific context, but this is where, for me, like maybe there might have been when I was a learner some mimicry happening. Like I think these are the rules. I think this is what I see my professor doing. I'm going to try it on and see if it works. But I didn't necessarily have a sophisticated understanding of them to like make a decision about whether I was doing that right or wrong. And then in stage 6, developing criteria to evaluate different kinds of authority within different kinds of contexts. So it can operate in a couple of different contexts. Maybe like thinking specifically about this is what I use in terms of authority in my discipline. This is what I use in my personal life. And this is what I use over here in this other aspect of my life. And then in stage 7, learners are starting to be more willing to critique their own reasoning and reevaluate their own beliefs. So again, a willingness to have their own knowledge superseded in light of new evidence. All right, I'm going to stop there. I think we can take a few questions. I think we have some time for that.
Okay, so we have wonder if Magolda's gender perspective is connected to Blinkley's women's ways of knowing.
Oh, I actually have the book here right beside me, and I'm half tempted to look, but I think I would probably spend a lot of time searching rather than presenting. I'm not sure. Again, Baxter-Magolda published this initially and does kind of talk through the inspirations for that particular study. So I think that would probably be addressed. Um, in the book, but I honestly don't know. And I don't have a lot of expertise in terms of thinking about gender differences, either in terms of this or information literacy more generally. So I'm not familiar with some of that work, but she may speak about that.
So we also have any information on how these models or participants deal when it is a peer-to-peer versus subordinate superior interactions.
Yes, Baxter-Magolda's model does take that into account. And particularly, I'm not sure, now that I'm reflecting on it, I'm not entirely sure that Baxter-Magolda hits on some of those power dynamics, which I think may be implicit in that question, but she definitely accounts for how learners perceive the role of the instructor in terms of their learning and how they perceive peers in terms of their learning and what they want from those different roles, but again, nothing jumps out to me. If you're looking for like an explication of the power differential there, I'm not sure. Though it is possible that there has been subsequent work that looks at that. Maybe not from Baxter-Magolda, but again, there have been numerous critiques about this model and her subsequent model after this that tends to be used in student affairs.
So we have one, and I'm not sure if we may have lost the context for this one, but so I apologize if it's already addressed, but how were these values measured?
How are these?
So yeah,
Um, I believe King and Kitchener was like over the period of many, many studies that they have been doing. Their methodologies are a little less um, present in my mind. Baxter-Magolda did longitudinal interviews with, I think it was about 100 students um, over their four-ish years in college, and then immediately after. I know there was attrition, of course. I mean, that's a long time for a student to engage in a single research study. I'm not sure what the final number was in terms of like how many students participated in all 4 or 5 of those interviews, but I know that the sample size was around 100. There were interviews that happened every year of college, and then she used various methods of qualitative analysis to develop the model. I think maybe that's what that question was getting at.
Okay, great. So yeah, so we have lots more questions. So just tell me how many you would like to take. So,
Let's see. Let's do another 1 or 2.
okay.
And then I'll kind of present some of what I've been working on, like showing how I'm trying to think about this in terms of information literacy. And then hopefully there'll be, and where I'm going next, because it's not complete at all. And hopefully there'll be some time for some more questions.
Okay, so next we have, were these stages developed along with faculty input to see how the steps could be integrated into the department curricula?
Oh, that I don't know, though both books do talk a bit about implementation, um, disciplinary I can't think of the word I'm trying to look for now, and ways of assessing. So there has been, including in the books that I've cited here, work about like the implications for teaching and practice, the implications for learning assessment, but whether or not disciplinary faculty provided any input into the development of these, that I'm not positive about.
And can you mention briefly just the titles of the books that you're referring to there again?
Yes, and actually, hold on one
Oh,
second here.
and Rashida actually put it in the chat as well, so thank you.
Oh, you know what? I may need to, all of these are cited in the article, and I think I may have taken for granted that the article has not been published yet. So I may need to um, pull together the bibliography to share out with the materials, Jane, with the follow-up email. But hold on one second here. Here we have Baxter-Magolda, Knowing and Reasoning in College. And in my head, they're just Baxter-Magolda, Epistle. I could not tell you the names of the books off the top of my head because that's not how I think of them in my head. And then King and Kitchener are Developing Reflective Judgment. And I'll keep those out here so I can type them in the chat then.
Then one more question, and then I think we can move on to another. Yeah, we'll try to get. So were these models based on empirical studies at the time?
Well, I mean, yes, Baxter-Magolda's was an empirical study in terms of the longitudinal interviewing with students, and then the application of systematic qualitative methods of analysis to that work. Again, the ways in which King and Kitchener came to develop their model is a little less clear to me, but I know that they had been doing a lot of work in terms of epistemological development prior to this, but the types of work that they had been doing that led to this model is not as clear in my head at the moment. And I will say too that King and Kitchener in some ways follows that Perry model that I mentioned previously that was one of the first in the 70s. I'm not sure off the top of my head if theirs is intended to be somewhat of a revision of Perry's based on empirical work that had been done over the years, but there's more of a relationship between King and Kitchener's work and Perry's work and those models than there is between Baxter Magolda and Perry's models. I'm not sure if that's helpful though.
And I'll just mention we do have some folks who are having a little trouble accessing the links, so we'll just make sure to check those links to make sure that they're available to everyone when we send out the follow-up email.
Excellent. I did check them in my Chrome where I'm not logged in prior to today, but I think we know that sometimes OneDrive changes some access uh, permissions without us knowing. Alrighty. Okay, so just bringing us back to a slide that we've already seen, like, okay, what does this mean in terms of thinking about how we approach information literacy? So the framework represents expert ways of approaching knowledge, but it doesn't necessarily give us the scaffolding to help us think about moving learners along those pathways towards the threshold concepts. And so as I was engaging with the epistemological development models over time, I'm like, oh, I see a lot of relationship here between the threshold concepts in the framework and these, and helping us to think about different stages that our learners might be in as we're working with them as librarians and as instructors. And so that's how I kind of came to wanting to do this work. Sorry, I'm also reflecting at the moment too. I'm like, wow, I probably should have broken this up into two different workshops and kind of introduced just the models themselves first and discussions around those, and then moving into the model I've been working on. But so I'm just kind of reflecting on that in my head at the moment. And so some of the questions that I've been asking myself, and I know in Meaningful Inquiry, Jane, Hannah, Katie, Chris, and I, we think a lot about how can we think about addressing the novice expert gap when it comes to information literacy. And this, again, is one of my ways of grappling with that particular question. Alrighty. So to address that question, I coded the framework using both of those two models, the epistemological reflection model and the reflective judgment model. And one reason was to see how the elements of the framework aligned with each of those models. Is the framework truly representative of what we might consider expert thinking? And again, my results and methodologies will be published in that article, but I found that yes, in general, it is. But I'm not going to discuss that analysis in depth today. Another reason was to see if I could use that kind of analysis to develop some kind of information literacy development model, one that centers this idea of threshold concepts, troublesome knowledge, transformative knowledge, liminal spaces, using some of the themes that are presented in both of those two models. Because they already give a framework for thinking about how to meet learners where they are in their beliefs or understandings about knowledge. So again, this is very much a work in progress. If I present this a couple of months from now, some of my thinking may have changed, in part due to feedback that if you are willing to do so, that you will give to me, and in part just continued grappling with these questions. So that's one reason I'm a little bit nervous to share, is because none of this is super concrete and this is still very much being formed. Okay, so this is a link to the spreadsheet, hopefully. And I am going to do a new share here just for a moment in case folks can't access the spreadsheet. Are you able to see the spreadsheet now, Jane?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. So I'll just give you a quick overview and then we'll go through some of what is in the spreadsheet. There is a Creative Commons license on the spreadsheet. So I've made this open, but I have some preferences in terms of how it's used and shared in terms of derivatives. On the General tab, what I'm initially trying to do is think about the framework and information literacy kind of in a broad sense, and create some dispositions and knowledge practices, I guess, in terms of different categories about students' relationship to knowledge and what that might look like related to information literacy. And so today I'm not going to go into specific frames like research as inquiry, scholarship as a conversation. I have started to do that work, and Jane's been gracious enough to provide me some feedback on that. So this is just very abstract thinking at the moment, but there's a lot of work still to be done. And then on the example tab, I've tried to provide an example of what I think that might look like in practice. So pretending that a learner is required to complete a research assignment exploring global warming, here's potentially how they might approach that assignment based on the different stages of this model, as well as different types of support that instructors could provide. And so my intention was to try and take something that's kind of abstract and still in progress and share with you how I think some of this might manifest in practice in common situations that instructors or librarians would be in. Okay. And this is not meant to be like super prescriptive, the be all end all. You know, there's probably a lot of like back and forth between these stages. They might not even be the right ones quite yet, but I really am using this, I think, as a way for us to start thinking and talking about these sorts of things. And I have far too much content for time that we have today. Again, reflecting on maybe this should have been broken down into a couple of webinars, but I'll just give kind of a very brief orientation to some of this, and then hopefully folks will be interested in grappling with this and engaging in conversation at a later time. So in this model, I have presented four different stages representing movement through the liminal space towards expert thinking as it's conceived in the framework. So that is very specific, and I think we can argue about, you know, what the framework represents in terms of expertise and what that means. And I'm open to those conversations as well. But then, just like with King and Kitchener, kind of two different categories here. Some novice stages, so preliminal, liminal, transitional, and an expert stage labeled as contextual. Okay. And so I was part of a sense-making team that was run by Elizabeth Wardle from Miami University. Some folks may be familiar with her. She's been a big name in threshold concept theory, particularly in writing studies. And the sense-making team was led by our colleague, Dr. Chris Mannion, in writing across the curriculum and included several other colleagues from Ohio State. And we were at this event talking for several days about threshold concepts, which was really fun. And one of those days, our local facilitator, Dr. Janice Klingman, who is an economics professor at Miami, said that crossing conceptual thresholds was kind of like entering a house, and how it can be really awkward to stand in someone's foyer, like that initial entrance into a house, not knowing if you'll be invited in or if that will be like kind of the extent of your welcome into that home, like somewhat suggesting, are you an acquaintance or are you a close friend? And when she said that, it just really struck me like, oh, wow, that is a really interesting way to think about if and how we welcome learners into academe, into our disciplines, into our classrooms. So I was grappling a lot with what she shared at the same time as I was grappling with these epistemological development models. So I thought it could be really helpful and interesting to have kind of a metaphor about where learners may feel like they're positioned in terms of our classrooms, disciplines, or the academy when thinking about epistemological development and information literacy. And so for preliminal folks, like maybe they're in the driveway, like, hey, you're at my house, like you found it, yay, welcome. And then in the liminal stage, they're at the front door. They felt confident enough to come up and knock or ring the doorbell, thinking that, you know, hopefully I will be greeted and welcomed into this home that I am visiting. And then the transitional stage, they're kind of in the foyer. They're in the house. They've been welcomed in, but they maybe have only been welcome into the small part of the house and not welcomed in such a way that they can fully engage with the home. But then in the contextual stage, they're in the living room. They're kind of fully in the house and engaged in the life of the house and with the family. So I thought for me, this was an interesting way to think about positionality and how are we, instructors, librarians, other folks who maybe have more powerful positions within the academy, thinking about welcoming students into that home. Alrighty. So some of the stages here, and again, I want to be able to get to questions, so I'm probably just going to present a couple of these, not go into a ton of depth, but just kind of provide an overview of what is in that spreadsheet. Thinking about the nature of knowledge, and this is something, of course, that we saw previously when speaking specifically about the two epistemological development models. And so in some ways, this is a little bit of a combination of the two of those and thinking about how they overlap or do not, and especially in terms of information literacy. Sources of knowledge. So where are learners comfortable getting their information or knowledge from? Whether or not it's from instructors or other fixed authorities in their life, whether or not they're open to acknowledging that there are multiple viewpoints, and whether or not they're open to listening to them and really like kind of reflecting on them and what that means in terms of their own beliefs, whether or not they're active in seeking out those alternative perspectives, and whether or not they recognize the power dynamics around authority and sources of knowledge and what that means for their own knowledge development, and whether or not they're also comfortable trying to disrupt that or challenge that. Also, again, this kind of gets back to the metaphor earlier, their relationship to knowledge, and thinking about, are there ways to help students move from consumer to this creator role, and what might some of that look like along this particular spectrum? Sorry. It went that time. How they may think they're supposed to engage with learning or their comfort level for engaging with different kinds of learning. So some students, and I was like this for a very long time, even through most of college, like I wanted to memorize and regurgitate facts. That was what I was comfortable with, and that was what I was really good at. I was less comfortable with trying to make sense of knowledge, particularly with disciplinary perspectives. I was less comfortable like asserting a voice. I was less comfortable applying knowledge. I think I see that in my discomfort with physics. I was really great at math, but when it came to applying that math to these scenario-based problems, I was like, please, no. So thinking about what their level of comfort might be for different expectations of learning within higher education. And then their understanding of academic and disciplinary context. What kind of awareness do they have about the expectations for how they may engage with information and knowledge? And not just the awareness, but moving towards understanding and thinking about what that means in terms of the work that they're producing and are going to be graded on, which has significant stakes for our students. The different levels of support that they may need as they move through the spectrum, and considering different ways in which instructors can be responsible for attempting to meet learners where they are. And I'm not suggesting that every instructor can meet every student exactly where they are all the time, but thinking about what types of strategies might be most appropriate for the learners that you have in your classroom. So I'm going to pause there and just share a couple of, I know I just did a whirlwind of that, but I want to get back to some of the questions because I think that they're really great, and even comments or feedback, even though folks haven't had a lot of time to engage with some of this. But what I'm working on now is trying to do some of this work within each of the 6 threshold concepts. in the framework and think about how to scaffold along those lines using those more abstract concepts that are in the current example of uh, the current spreadsheet. And so an example of this is I've started to do some work with authority as constructed and contextual, and I'm attempting to scaffold like the contextual nature of authority, the construction of authority, applying the understandings of what authority means in the context, the role of skepticism in terms of thinking about authority, and then also students' own development of their authoritative voices. And so I do have a slide here that previews that, though again, I haven't had a chance to really like super grapple with this. But here's some of what I'm thinking for that kind of work. And so I think I'm going to pause there. And I can go back to any one of these slides to dig into anything that folks are interested in. I do have a feedback survey because, again, I'm just really interested in seeing what resonates with folks, what folks might challenge, insights that folks have. I'm trying on a new like scholarly identity where I'm trying to create things now that are open and to create community and conversation around them. And I still haven't figured out exactly how to do that, but like that's another thing that I'm grappling with at the moment because I think um, something like this should be kind of like community built and community driven and community refined. So I'm playing with what exactly that means. But if you are interested and willing to provide feedback at any point, not just today, but like if you go back and look at the materials, I would be grateful for that gift of your feedback. Um, I'll leave that there and let's see where the next few minutes take us in terms of Q&A. And thanks so much for uh, riding along with me here. Apologies that there was so much content for today. It just didn't occur to me that folks may want to dig in a little bit more to those development models. And if I do this again, I'm going to tear things apart into shorter sections so that we have more time to grapple with the different components of this. But thank you.
So, Amanda, did you want me to go through the Q&A or would you prefer to do it yourself
Oh, I can
or?
do it. Yeah. I'll leave the slides up here too, just in case we need to go back to any of them. Sorry. Here we go. I think it's the open ones. Is that correct, Jane?
Or
In the question and answer, is it the tab
yes,
that says, oh, cool. Awesome.
yes.
Thank you. Um, One of our colleagues asks, it sounds like this is an approach to knowledge with a fixed or growth mindset based entirely on individual's experience. Jane, I was thinking about that too when I was initially reviewing these models. I've done a little bit of work in terms of Dweck's theories of intelligence. And it does seem to me, especially at those stages that are more absolute type thinking, where knowledge is like yes or no, where authority is very fixed for those learners, I think that is potentially true. It seems like there may be that fixed or growth mindset thinking that is there. I have not reconciled if and how growth and fixed mindsets interact with the rest of these models, including the one that I'm working on right now. On the one hand, it does seem like you would need to have a growth mindset in order to continue down uh, the path towards threshold concepts, but I'm not entirely sure that's true because I've dabbled in that stuff. I'm certainly not an expert in it, but that is something that had occurred to me as well. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Let's see here. Gender-related patterns take LGBTQ plus individuals into account. Again, unknown. I can't remember if Baxter Magolda collected and or shared that information related to student identity. What I can remember is that the genders represented in that initial study were male and female, and I'm not sure if in any subsequent publications, such as an article publications, where she may have been taking a more nuanced or specific lens to some of that work, if that comes into play. But I do not recall that from her book. Oh, is the perspective that the learning restarts for every new subject learned? Oh, that's a great question. Kind of curious what Jane might say about this too, because I think, I think about some of our work with decoding the disciplines and having and transparency in learning and teaching and having instructors or experts in the discipline kind of interact with assignments from other disciplines almost like as an outsider, right? And so I would say yes and no. I think this is a gut feeling. This is not from anything I've gotten from empirical evidence. But it seems to me that once we kind of maybe get to those later stages in the epistemological development model, there is learning that restarts anew. But at that point, too, I think there's some awareness and reflection on how to take what we've learned in other contexts and transfer that learning to new contexts. So we may need to learn new vocabularies or new concepts or theories, but we may have already developed a framework for understanding that in a way we might not have at earlier stages. Not sure if that makes sense. I would say probably yes or no. Um, or yes and no to that. Excuse me. Is there any understanding of learning stages being more or successful for, say, a STEM discipline versus a political perspective? Not necessarily in the materials that I've used for this, but again, there's been a lot of disciplinary level work in terms of epistemological development. So I'm not sure if there are any that do that kind of comparative perspective, but I know that there have been um, investigations of epistemological development, like within a discipline or for STEM students. I'm actively building a new taxonomy and rubric for our program. Given that your work is still developing, do you have preferences for attributions regarding timing? More granular data on an attribution to reflect. Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. Um, I hadn't thought of that. I think if you were using this and you were to give attribution, first of all, I'm excited to hear that you're maybe thinking about using this and that it's helpful. I think, even if you just wanted to cite today's presentation, I think that captures kind of the point in time of the development of this particular model. And even in my own files, I'm like, this is the presentation and the spreadsheet I shared in May 2025 so that I can also document which versions of this I've shared at what time. But feel free to reach out to me after this, and thank you for that question. What does it mean to be an expert? PhD, PhD with published articles, PhD and known expert in the field. I mean, I think that's absolutely debatable and something that's not necessarily fixed. I can think of folks who are expert in certain things that don't necessarily have an advanced degree. Um, so I don't know that I have a great answer for that other than in the framework, those ways of thinking and knowing I feel are representative of folks who are considered disciplinary experts. And of course, the terminal degree for that will vary from discipline to discipline, but those those are reflective of the way those folks approach inquiry and knowledge creation. Have I also considered the solo taxonomy by Biggs and Collis? No, I haven't heard of this one actually. I'm going to take a look at that after today. I have not heard of this one. So thank you, anonymous attendee, because I that is new learning for me. I'm just checking the time here. Yeah, we still have a few more minutes here. Do these studies address information literacy instruction for members of the same cohort or class who may be at very different stages of knowledge development? How to close the gap without isolating any individuals? Great question. And to be clear, there have been, as far as I know, there have been no or very few studies that have used these models in terms of information literacy and information literacy instruction. In the article, I do cite a paper from actually our colleague down the road, Miriam Matson at Kent State, and some of her colleagues, that they published at the European Conference on Information Literacy a couple of years ago that kind of uses some of these and other epistemological belief models in terms of information literacy development, but I don't recall it going specifically into teaching practices there. So, but in those books, the books that I mentioned previously about the models, there are there's some guidance about what this means in terms of teaching practice. Now, they were from the 90s. So I think we also have to keep in mind that some things have endured and other things have not. But that is also, I think, part of what I'm hoping to get at with kind of developing community and conversation around this is if we have a model like this, then how can it be useful in terms of our practice and the different ways in which we teach? Information literacy is a topic worthy of being taught, but I don't think it's an academic discipline, and I'm not sure it really has anything at the level of threshold concepts. Yeah, that's certainly debatable. And I think there have been a lot of debates in the profession about whether or not threshold concepts are the right thing for information literacy, whether or not the application of threshold concepts in the framework to information literacy are really true to the idea of what threshold concepts are or were meant to be. And of course, some of our colleagues, Clarence Mabey, Karen Kaufman, have been facilitating conversations about whether or not information literacy is a discipline. And of course, there's folks who fall along an entire spectrum in terms of that argument. So yeah, I think that you have some good company there. I'm trying to avoid using names since it's recorded. I know some folks don't want their name to be said on a recording. So thank you for that. And yes. Have you started to envision how assessment might happen under this model in terms of figuring out what stages learners are in, particularly in terms of thinking of the one shot? Thank you for this. Yes and no. So some of the things that I've commonly heard and I've experienced too when I was doing more of direct student instruction is that when we had the standards, the learning outcomes for our teaching were a lot easier to develop because they were written in that kind of a way. We had performance indicators, they were very skill and task based. And a lot of folks have expressed that they're not really sure how to develop learning outcomes around these threshold concepts and knowledge practices and dispositions, because again, it represents like the certain level of thinking and our learners are on their pathway to that. So what I'm hoping is that by maybe providing a framework for thinking about those scaffolds, that it may become easier to develop those learning outcomes that then we can assess. And regardless of the type of teaching that we're doing.
I think we maybe have time for one more question.
Great. Let me just look here. I'll read the next one that is a comment here. As you do the next phase of your work, you mentioned the role of skepticism in terms of authority. This colleague attended an eye-opening presentation at LOEX by Kate Weimer from George Fox University, who suggests the current generation of learners arrive more skeptical than we're used to. And she asks we think about the role of belief. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. I will look up that presentation if I can't find it. I appreciate having a name of a colleague that I'd be able to reach out to. Oh, and that was shared. The full name of the presentation is shared in the next question here. So I hope other folks will look into that too, and that Kate's work gets some views here.
And apparently Kate is here today. And
oh, hey, Kate.
Just mentioned that she would love to follow up with you, Amanda. So
wonderful.
I did put I'll put Amanda's email again in the chat, but it's folk.68, right?
Yeah.
At osu.edu. All right. So I think we are at 1:15. So thank you all so much for being here today. Please, everyone, thank Amanda. I know this has been a fantastic presentation. I think we can tell how great this was and how thought-provoking this was. This may have been the most questions that I've seen in a presentation that we have given. So this is really fantastic. Folks are really engaged with this. Again, everyone will get a follow-up email either sometime later today or tomorrow with the recording, the slides, contact information, and information on upcoming webinars in the summer series. So we hope to see you all again. Amanda, any final words that you would like to share?
No, just expressions of gratitude to you, Jane, again, for allowing me to present today. And thank you to everybody for sticking along with me as I muddled through all of this. I really appreciate the thoughtful comments and questions and hope that we can continue to engage in this conversation.
Okay. And if you did not get your question answered, please, I know that Amanda would be willing to just answer questions directly. So please don't hesitate to email her if we did not get to your question today. So have a wonderful, wonderful day, everyone. Hope to see you at our upcoming workshops, and have a great long weekend to everyone. So thank you, Amanda.
Thank you. Did Treat behave for you?
He did, yes,
Okay.
thankfully. So I was a little worried, but he pulled through. So
Good job, Treat.
yeah. All right. All right. So yeah, Amanda, if there's anything, I'm going to stop recording really quickly here.
Yep.